Three, two, one, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from three Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd related media. This is season one, episode 14, Bounty Hunter. So, before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of the episode, our co collaborator here, Goose, has something that's dear to our hearts that he wants to talk about. So, Goose?
Yes, as many of you know from our Twitter feed, there was a monumental occurrence that happened back in our home island of Puerto Rico. I don't know if a lot of people are aware, but we housed the Arecibo Radio Telescope, which is a used to be for the longest time the largest radio telescope in the world until there was one built in I don't know which part of China, but in China that like out outsized our telescope. And I know a lot of you, even though you may think you are not aware of the Arecibo Radio Telescope, you probably are if you are a James Bond fan, because the best Pierce Brosnan James Bond film, GoldenEye, featured it quite prominently in its final sequence with James
Yes.
Bond versus 006 Alec Trevelyan, and it's also the best level in the GoldenEye N64
Game. Mm-hmm.
video game. The
Yep.
only
Yes.
bad thing about GoldenEye, the movie, is that they said that this was set in Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
It was not.
It was not.
Puerto Rico,
Yep.
Puerto Rico, and it's real. Also, the movie Contact by one of our favorite scientists, well, written by one of our favorite scientists, Carl Sagan, was
Our
also
Lord and
set,
Savior.
our Lord and Savior, was also set, at least the first part, in the
Yeah.
Arecibo Radio Telescope, and they factually state where it is, thankfully, in that
In
that
that
film.
one. Yeah. Yeah.
That aside, what was happening was in August, a couple of like the support structural cables that give the structural support to the telescope snapped, causing a lot of structural distress on the structure. So there was a lot of questions of how to rehabilitate it, if at all. The National Science Foundation actually started the plan to decommission it, but then a White House petition was created to uh, help stabilize and recommission the telescope. But 2020 being the year that it is, right
Yeah.
when
Of,
we
of
shared,
course, of course.
Yep.
because 2020, right
Yeah.
when we shared that petition online, the next day, sadly the radio telescope collapsed in very dramatic
Fortunately.
fashion.
Yeah.
Very unfortunately, it's very heart wrenching footage of it.
Yes.
If you're sadistic and want to watch it,
Yeah.
conspiracy theory: why was that drone there at that exact time? Anyway, uh,
Yeah.
but despite what a lot of people think, that the radio telescope was actually in its last throes, and that
Yeah.
wasn't being upgraded, and that it wasn't being
Being
used
used.
anymore.
Yeah.
It actually was still being used right up until all of this happened, and it was very important in a lot of scientific discoveries. And not only was it
Yeah.
an icon for us as an island, but it was also a big icon for research, for astrophysics and science in general. And I think, Mo, you have a very personal story that kind of connects you
Uh,
to it.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Not the telescope itself. Got damaged because of 2020 earthquakes, Hurricane Maria.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a tough years.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a beacon for education. It was my brother who used to do research and did a bachelor's in physics at the University of Puerto Rico. Actually, did his undergrad lab work, and pretty much I don't think I think he did ended up writing, being part of a thesis as a
Okay.
named person, but he wasn't like the writer.
Mm-hmm.
But they were actually looking into what's called dark galaxies, and dark galaxies are none other than galaxies that have almost no stars or actual no stars. So they're just galaxies of dark stars. So
Oh,
when he told me about that, I was like mind blown.
What?
Yes, not only that, but
Uh-huh.
and this was
they
happening at our radio telescope.
this was happening at Arecibo Radio Telescope. So please, if you ever see a petition to bring it back online, please do it, because it was actually innovating research. Not only that, they actually found my brother found one potential candidate of a dark galaxy. Yes.
That sounds
And that's only
wilder than any Star Wars thing I've
yes.
ever
Oh,
heard.
absolutely.
know.
Dark galaxies. Just imagine that.
Yeah.
Palpatine's wet dream, basically.
Yes. And before we go like jumping into we have like better technology for like viewing stars and whatnot, a radio telescope in the like olden technology or quote unquote old,
Mhm.
you actually get to see the distant past of the universe.
Mm.
They're the frequencies that take the longest to dissipate. So they're actually the ones we receive the clearest images of
Mm.
the universe. So how incredibly valuable, how amazing for us as space fans, Star Wars fans,
Mhm.
and heck yeah, I want to know what a dark galaxy is.
Yeah.
Like,
And
so
you
Sci-fi
that after we're
becoming
done with
real.
this.
sci-fi is real.
Yep.
Well, I actually I had a professor that said that reality is weirder than fiction. So
Yep.
Yep.
and
That's
that's
pretty
a fact.
amazing story.
So,
Uh,
so to restate what we're saying, if you see any petition whatsoever out there about, recommissioning the radio telescope of Arecibo, just sign it. You will not regret it. You lose nothing by signing it, and maybe they'll
Yes.
discover dark galaxies. Who knows?
maybe I mean, we'll definitely have the link on our.
Mhm.
We already have the link on our Twitter, so you can go ahead and check it out there. But also, we will have the link below on our YouTube links. But if you are listening on podcast version, just you can do a quick Google search for White House Radio Telescope petition,
Yeah.
and you'll find it. Or just take the extra step and follow us on Twitter, and then you can find out. Because not only rebuilding it will help with scientific discoveries, but if you're vain, it will also help with really cool movie sets because we will have some
Yeah.
really cool structure for
Yeah.
future movies that hopefully it's rebuilt. It'll be a little different.
Yeah.
So, we can do Contact 2 on it.
Golden
But
Eye
also,
2.
I think going back to Carl Sagan and the radio telescope, one of the other cool things that the radio telescope was doing was SETI research. And for those who don't
Yeah.
know, SETI is Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. That, fun fact, Carl Sagan helped design the message for. So not only is it doing some really badass scientific discoveries of dark galaxies and the universe, but it's also trying to find if there are space aliens out there. So do yourselves a favor. If you want to know if there's aliens, we need to listen to them, and we were listening to them in Puerto Rico. So sign the petition, help us out.
Hey, who knows? Maybe Star Wars is actually somehow George Lucas made contact with a galaxy far, far away, and they're just waiting for that radio telescope to get built.
Yep.
So get on it.
Get on it. Okay.
And those who already signed, thank you. Make another account, sign it again.
Okay, so now that we're done with the aside side, it's a very important aside, of course, but let's get into the episode.
The Bounty Hunter.
Yes. So I think originally we were planning on doing something else for the episode, but if you guys haven't watched our analysis of the last episode of The Mandalorian, The Tragedy, we had so much fun dissecting this reintroduction of Boba Fett into the Star Wars universe that we decided, screw that. Let's talk about Boba Fett. Let's, remember when we first saw him, his, transition throughout the years, and now this like new Boba that we got. So I think Goose, you want to get started with like our first introduction to Boba Fett in 1978.
Boba Fett, as most everybody knows at this point, and for those who don't, then we will let you know now, was first seen in live action in the best Star Wars movie of the original trilogy. Sorry, Husbando. Sorry, Brian. The Empire Strikes Back. We first see him there in all his mighty Mandalorian glory, with that beautiful, worn out suit of armor, and like the only person that kind of interacts with Darth Vader in a like equal kind of way. But the fun fact for that people might not be aware of is that that was not his first appearance in the Star Wars universe. First, he appeared
Fake
actually like in
news.
a. He actually appeared. I don't know which one of these two things happened first, actually, but he appeared in a parade somewhere in rural America next to Darth Vader, and then like there was a picture of him in the newspaper. So technically, he appeared there first. But in terms
Okay.
of Star Wars media, he appeared in the infamous, not the new okay-ish holiday special that we already talked about. If you
Yeah.
haven't, go check out our episode on it. But in the original infamous Star Wars holiday special, where as a true badass, he comes in riding a fucking dinosaur. I mean, it's
Yes.
pretty amazing.
It is
Obviously,
amazing. It is amazing.
it's in animated form, so
Mhm.
It's worth watching that part.
yes, it's really interesting. I mean, even though the whole holiday special is a bit of a shit show to say
Yeah.
the least, Boba's appearance is pretty
Mhm.
special. And another fun fact, this is the fun fact episode, I guess, is that the rifle that Boba Fett is using in the holiday special is what inspired Mando's rifle in the Mandalorian. So
Really?
there you go,
I
more
did
and
not
more
know that.
connections, layers on top of layers. This is just
Layers on
onion.
top of layers.
This is
Yep.
That's a
Bobaception
beauty.
right now.
Boba
Boba
Fett. Hashtag that.
Hashtag.
Yeah.
Going back to Boba, Boba was played by a British actor called Jeremy Bulloch in physical form, but his voice was originally portrayed by Jason Wingreen, and he only had infamously only had 4 lines
Four
in the
lines.
entire trilogy.
Yeah.
But somehow those 4 lines and that look was badass enough to transcend fandom and make him an icon into epic proportions as he
Yep.
is to this day and age. Even though his next appearance in Return of the Jedi was, some would say, lackluster, because
To
his
say the
badass,
least.
to say the least, his badass level went from standing tall and proud to falling into a butthole in the sand. Uh,
And not even graciously
Not
falling.
Not
I
even
even
mean, it was
graciously.
just like by a almost blinded Han Solo, like
gets hit with a
hitting
stick.
his jetpack, and it's like, oh, isn't it? You're a
He
Mandalorian.
didn't.
This is
He
this
didn't
is
even
what
hit him on
destroys you.
purpose.
I know. I know.
It's
It
the
wasn't.
worst part. It wasn't
Yeah.
even on purpose.
Did it? Poor Boba didn't even see it coming.
He went like a chump.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he probably after being after the Sarlacc pit and being in Tatooine, I'm sure he had to replay that scene in his mind a few times to be at
Oh, yeah.
peace with it.
Yeah. It's like, how did that happen? How did
Maybe
I
that's
end
why
up
it
in the
took.
Sarlacc
Maybe
pit so
maybe that's why it took
pathetically?
him 5 years to finally leave Tatooine. He's just like internalizing everything.
I've
PTSD, Sarlacc pit failure.
Oh, yeah.
oh my god, that would be amazing. No, like imagine a story of somebody that went through PTSD, took their hermit time, 5 years or so to get okay, like transcend their hatred for whatever happened, and then comes back and saves humanity. It's like
Because he can't even technically hate Han Solo, because I mean
It wasn't
his
on
back was turned
purpose.
against him, so he doesn't even know who knocked him over.
I mean,
So-
for all it could be, for Boba could have thought, oh my god, I had mechanical failures. I forgot to check the
Yeah,
jetpack this
something.
morning.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
like the alarm went off on my jetpack to check the engine, and I didn't.
And I
take it to
didn't
the
pay
mechanic.
attention to it.
Yeah.
Those Jawas like were gonna charge me an arm and a leg for it, and I decided not to give it maintenance.
Oh, well.
But
And that's the last thing we see of Boba.
and that's the
Fatal.
last thing we see of Boba until Friday's glorious Mandalorian episode, which we'll talk about some of the fan gatekeeping that has been happening now with like Boba Fett lore. But before going into that, I think one of the interesting things to mention before that is that based on Boba Fett's popularity, there were extra scenes that were filmed for Boba
Mhm.
Fett then for Return of the Jedi on the special edition and for A New Hope, where he was inserted into old
Yeah.
footage that was again inserted into
Yeah.
insertion among insertion
Yeah.
of footage
Bobaception.
for Bobaception. It's just all
Bobaception.
layers and layers. Because that scene that I'm talking about, which is that new scene in A New Hope where Jabba the Hutt confronts Han Solo
Yeah.
right before they like go to take Obi-Wan and Luke to Alderaan. That was obviously a scene that was filmed with a original actor and all the bounty hunters behind him. And then obviously that actor was digitally replaced with Jabba the Hutt. But originally that scene did not feature Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Boba Fett was added afterwards in the 90s for the special edition. So
Mhm.
I mean, that CGI was pretty seamless, not so much Jabba the Hutt.
Not so much Jabba, just he looks
Jabba,
so
I mean,
bad in that scene.
or maybe Jabba was so bad that made makes Boba just
They just added Boba.
shine like
yes, yeah, true. Good point. I mean, this is one thing. Like, I really am not a big fan of like uh, people going in and changing effects
Yeah.
in movies and upgrading things. But this is one that I will personally, because we know that Disney and Lucasfilm listen to our show,
Of
so I
course.
will personally make a plea. Disney, Lucasfilm, you have our permission. Please go in and fix Jabba the Hutt.
Yes.
I mean, if you're gonna keep that scene, that's the least you can do for us.
Yes.
Just fix
Yes.
him because he looks terrible. But bringing it back into more changes in the trilogy, which is actually one of the positive changes that I think George Lucas actually did in terms of continuity's sake, was the replacement of the original actor that we mentioned before for Boba Fett's voice to Timora Morrison, the actor that portrayed uh, Django Fett, which would obviously make sense in terms of like how his voice sounds like, because as we know, and Nani will go into detail when we talk about the prequels, Boba Fett was a clone of Django Fett. I think there are some other like behind the scenes things that we could talk about Boba Fett, but for the fluidity of this conversation, why don't we like move into Boba Fett's history now in the prequels? And Manny, I think you had something to say about that.
Okay, so for you guys that have been listening, I had never before watched the Clone Wars animated series, and I apologize gravely. I know, shame on me highly, because I was missing a lot. So we get a lot of character development of the character of Boba Fett as a child in the animated series. But before getting to that, for those of you who do not know, we first actually see him as a child in Attack of the Clones, and that's where we first find out really where he came from.
By Daniel Logan,
who voiced him in the animated series.
Yep.
Which, again, continuity, go Filoni, just amazing thought process there to actually make that happen. But we first meet him, Django Fett. At this point, we don't really know. We know he has Mandalorian armor, but we don't know if he's a Mandalorian or not. But he's in Camino, and he was basically the DNA donor for the Republic's clone army. So the entire clone army is based off of Django Fett. And then Django, what he wanted in return for donating his blood, DNA, whatever, was a lot of money and
special
a clone.
Sauce.
Or M count. Could be an M count.
Could be.
Who knows? Was for him to, get a lot of money and to get a clone of himself, but without any of the preconditioning or any of the growth hormones that they give them to make them like accelerate growth and everything. So that's Boba. Boba is a clone of Django, but that he raises as his own son. And then, long story short, he trains him really well. He actually, flies away and shoots at Obi-Wan from the Slave One. So he knows to actually shoot from a very young age. He's been training since he was a kid. And then we go to Geonosis when the battle happens at the end of the movie. And there's Django Fett in full Mandalorian armor. And then the Jedi arrive, and Mace Windu ends up decapitating Django Fett in front of Boba. And you have that very iconic scene where Boba's just holding his father's helmet to his face, and it's this just like consumed with revenge. And that's the last we see of Boba. And then we get the animated series. In the animated series, we get an episode. I don't remember what season it was. Do you remember, Goose?
No, I'm bad at keeping track of the seasons, just because since they're not chronological.
Yeah, I know it's kind of hard, but there's this episode where you have a bunch of clone cadets basically touring one of the ships, and with their brother clones, and like trying to basically like Boy Scouts almost. And I remember thinking, obviously they all look the same because they're clones, but there was some attitude with this one kid, and I turned to Josbando and I was like, is that Boba? And he's like, well, just wait and find out.
It's like, do you want to watch the show? You want to watch it?
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, Boba Fett as a kid,
Boba
animated
Fett?
series.
Boba Fett? Where?
What? Where? Oh, so mean. So mean.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I had to do it.
Han Solo, you had to do it. After we talked about the poor guy just failing miserably, and you had to point it out again.
Yeah.
Mean.
Ugh.
Mean.
Ugh.
Okay. Anyway, so you have this episode where Boba like infiltrated the cadets because he is gung ho about killing Mace Windu.
Rightfully so.
Yes, because
Mace Windu's kind of a dick. Called Ahsoka citizen, killed his dad. It's like, no, this guy's gonna go.
yeah, it's not good. Well, anyway, eventually his plan fails. Some clone troopers end up dying instead of Mace Windu. You find out that he's actually partnered up with like Aura Singh and Bosk and Castas, who are on the Slave One. So you actually get to see the Slave One, but you start to see that he doesn't necessarily want to be a bad guy. He just wanted to kill Mace Windu. He actually feels bad that some clone troopers ended up dying. And
Glad you caught yourself.
yeah. And he really hesitates when he has to leave like his fellow cadets. He seems like he was actually kind of enjoying, being with his peers and finding some camaraderie and stuff. And later on, after this attempt fails, they end up taking some hostages, and Boba does not agree on how the hostages are treated, like killing them to get the Jedi to show up, and being denied water and basically tortured, and Boba was not okay with it. So you do see a moral side to Boba Fett, like at least as a kid, that even though he's like bent on revenge and hatred, he does not necessarily portray this whole "I'm just the bounty hunter and I don't care about anything" kind of attitude. You see a different side to him. So he is unable to kill Mace Windu again as a kid. Yeah. He tries to kill him again by, tempting him by having some hostages, but fails again in an episode that's great because the hero of that episode is R2D2. Being able to like rescue them. It's a great episode. And he ends up regretting that he was doing all these things because of the cost, and he tells Mace Windu that he is never going to forgive him. But he regrets like trying so actively to murder him, but that he's never ever going to forgive him for what happened. And he ends up getting arrested. And then you have this other arc later on, I think that's season 4, where Obi-Wan Kenobi fakes his identity and goes to jail, and then you have Boba like a little bit more grown up, like fighting him just to like create a diversion so that Cat Bane and I don't remember who the other character was can escape. Cat Bane. So on that point,
we'll get into Cat Bane. But
yeah. So on that point, Cat Bane is probably my favorite bounty hunter, not Boba Fett. Yeah. Just to throw that out there a little bit.
But that is objectively true.
Cat
Sorry,
Bane is,
Boba. Sorry, Boba fanboys, but Cat Bane.
Cat Bane.
That's it.
Everything from his look to the way his voice sounds to how he operates, there's just something fantastic about Cat Bane. And then what I think the only other arc that Boba shows up in Clone Wars that unfortunately I haven't gotten to, so you guys might be able to talk about it better than me, is when he teams up with Asajj Ventress.
Yes.
So
I don't remember that well, but
do you remember that arc, Goose?
No, but I do remember.
There we go.
I do remember.
Oh, he had to do it, didn't he?
had to.
He had to do it.
For those who are listeners, Goose is showcasing.
Yes.
Goose, what are you showcasing us this time? What's from your fine collection?
This is a fine addition to my collection, which is the special edition convention exclusive, even though there wasn't a convention this year. Black Series Cat Bane with Seth Green. I always forget his character. Todo 360. The character Seth Green played. It's the jewel, one of the crowning achievements of my Black Series collection.
Cat Bane.
Cat Bane. But no, sorry. To answer your question, I don't remember that arc. I do remember the deleted scene arc episode, whatever you want to call it, of the showdown between Boba Fett and Cat Bane, that never made it into the series. That explains where Boba Fett got the dent on his helmet, which is on a showdown with Cat Bane. But I think we saw the animatics for that in Celebration Orlando, was it?
I think it was in Orlando. Yeah, it was Orlando.
Celebration Orlando. Yeah,
we were there. So
we were there.
So apparently that is a real memory and not a fabricated memory. I always like to double check those things because sometimes things I think I remember are just fake memories.
Yeah.
But
It's like you dreamed about it and think it really happened.
fake
I
memories
mean
are a thing. Look it up.
no, it's a possibility. We could be all massively deluded about this, but
Yes.
at least I have a vague recollection of that being presented in the Clone Wars panel.
Yes, because wasn't that the same panel where they showed the art for Rebels that showed old Rex
Yes.
Yeah.
in the Return
Yeah.
of the Jedi gear,
Yep.
kind of
Yeah.
confirming the fan theory.
Confirming the.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the Rebels panel then.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait.
No. Wait.
Rebels. Yeah, it was the Rebels panel.
Because there were two separate panels. The Rebels one, where they showed
No. It was actually
the
the
same
Rebels.
one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, oof,
Anyway,
my
so
mind.
so we don't remember the last arc that Boba was in, but basically the takeaway is you see this kid who was an orphan who had his father murdered by a Jedi. So he just has this like complete different vision of Jedi as, we were grown up to believe the Jedi were. And basically it is raised by a ragtag team of bounty hunters throughout the way until he makes himself one of the most feared bounty hunters in the galaxy by the time that we get to the original trilogy. He builds this reputation for being ruthless. And I mean, at one point in the original trilogy, like Darth Vader has to tell him no disintegrations. Like, don't be bad, Boba. I need the bodies. Like,
No,
I mean, so
it's like that's gonna cost you extra.
Yeah, exactly. Mercy. There's an extra billing rate for Mercy.
So I mean,
service fee.
It's
exactly.
It's like these gangsters who get a reputation for killing people in a certain way. Like, who gets famous by disintegrating people? I mean, this guy was completely ruthless. And
I mean, but that's actually, now that you mentioned that though, how does that bode well for him as a bounty hunter? Because if I'm a bounty hunter,
you need to show proof
I
that
need
it
to
actually
show proof of
happened.
my bounty. I disintegrate them. There's
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could.
There's some.
You could technically,
professional, issues there.
You could technically like.
Can you DNA
take
dust?
take some, or like to make a recording or something, or take some.
You can Photoshop, the space Photoshop.
Yes, but
that's why you need the space cadaver.
Space cadaver. Yep.
Or take some teeth or something before you disintegrate them.
Well, but again, no, because like you could have taken the teeth and then told him like, okay, now you can go, and you can pretend you're dead. Now that I have the teeth, no.
Well, that's why
I see some ethical concerns here with the bounty hunting profession.
Okay, so you think he should watch Django Unchained and learn how to be a correct bounty hunter?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a good idea. I think Django and Dr. Schultz had a good understanding of bounty hunting, because they didn't disintegrate anybody, and they always got their person. They always got the target.
And they just carried the bodies, had proof. Give me my money. Done.
Fantastic movie, by the way. Quentin
it is. We should do a little Tarantino series.
A Tarantino series
Mm-hmm.
coming soon.
Now that we're on that topic, I'm just out of curiosity, I need to ask, what did y'all think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Loved it.
Really? Because I thought it was so overrated. Like
I actually really enjoyed it.
I saw it on the big screen because there's the theater here in Chicago, the Music Box. Anyone who's not familiar with it, it's one of the best movie theaters ever because they still show movies. Like, it's an old school theater, so obviously it has that going for it, which is beautiful. But it also still does old school projections, so they still do film. And It's one of the few theaters that still do 70 millimeter. So obviously, when Tarantino films come out or Christopher Nolan films come out, they do 70 mil projections at the Music Box. So I went to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 70 millimeter, and it wasn't bad. I was just the reviews and the media were like hyping up the movie so much that I'm like, oh my god! I mean, because I already loved Django. I loved Hateful Eight, which everyone thought was okay.
I didn't like Hateful Eight actually that much.
I loved Hateful Eight. Oh my god! But for me, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just fell flat. Not that it's bad, but it just
didn't deliver.
Did not deliver the goods.
I hadn't actually heard anything about it, so when I watched it, I was a complete clean slate. So I didn't know that it had been hyped that much. I saw it when it came out on like DVD, way later. So
Mm,
I wasn't expecting anything. So I actually found it
okay.
very enjoyable. But we are completely off topic now. I think
We are.
later we can do a Tarantino segment and like
Yes.
rate our favorite Tarantino movies as well.
And he'll be on the show.
Of course, because
Of course.
all these celebrities are fans,
They
and
do.
they've
They are. They do. They listen. They'll be here.
so anyway, getting back to Boba Fett, uh, as a child, you see, that he was just a kind of abandoned, but he didn't really want to be like a bad guy, I think. And even later when he disintegrates people, I don't think he was a bad guy either. He was just a professional, and he just, he was a bounty hunter.
I don't know.
But-
That's it. You do what you have to do, survive in the galaxy. Just a simple man.
Yes.
Trying to make his way through the universe. Which was like a nice callback to Attack of the Clones,
Yes.
saying the same thing that
As
Django,
Django.
had said,
Mhm.
and then also the same thing that Luke said when he says like my father before me, or some variation of that.
It was good.
It was good. It was good. And then I think that segues into last episode on
Yeah,
Mandalorian,
the
right?
episode. But I think before we get into what the episode did, I think we should talk about what we thought of the character before, because fanboys
Yeah.
just
Fanboy's kind of
love.
fan. Yeah.
Yeah,
Fanboys-
and Boba Fett was just
I
like
just
this.
imagine like people fanning.
Wow, that is just
They fan the flame
yeah.
of gatekeep.
Yeah. So there was this like Boba Fett was always like this larger than life character that people just idolize so much, and I could never get into that conversation because I wasn't a fan. I didn't understand why he was such a big deal. He only had 4 lines in the original. Not saying that he didn't look cool, but again,
Undeniable.
undeniable. But then, like Goose was saying before, he just fails epically in Return of the Jedi. It's like kind of comedic and like kind of Three Stooges, like
Yeah, it's very
And-
slapsticky. Yeah.
yeah. And so I never understood why people were such a huge fan. Sorry if people are gonna hate this because I know the Boba Fett fandom is intense.
I hear the dislikes.
I hear
the
this
dislike
dislikes
clicks
already.
happening.
Okay.
So obviously watching Clone Wars added more depth to the character for me, but I still didn't get like why people cared that much. So that was my imagining of who Boba Fett was before watching this. And actually,
Yeah.
when they first were talking about the Mandalorian and they were saying that the Mandalorian was going to be a Boba Fett show, I was like, why?
Yeah.
I don't care. That was my interpretation at least going into this. So what did you guys think before this?
I'm totally with you, Nani.
Mhm.
I saw Boba, as a cool looking
Yeah.
plot device. It was just there to advance the drama,
Mhm. Yeah.
so we could eventually get Luke and Vader fighting.
Mhm.
But and then their death was just inconsequential, or apparent death was inconsequential. Falling into the Sarlacc pit. Although I will not want to be falling into a Sarlacc pit.
It does not look pleasant.
It does
No.
not look pleasant. But which could be an allegory for a cave myth. But let's or but
It's possible.
jump. It is possible.
I
I
think it is, especially now that he's alive. It's
not now that it's alive, it's actually the transition of
Mhm.
what we will eventually see, and I think
Mm.
kind of this what excited me about this character being portrayed now. Like
Mhm.
I thought it was just a plot device, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, now they can turn what was just insignificant into meaningful.
Mhm.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So I'm interested to see where this goes.
Mhm.
How
It's
about you,
interesting.
Goose?
It's interesting because like I always liked. I mean, I liked Boba Fett.
Mhm.
Don't get me wrong. I wasn't like hard. I didn't go hard on the Boba Fett train of him being like the baddest in all the land. But I was always on board with, hey, dude's cool. Um, um, I'm in. I'm in. But not on the train. I was maybe on the bus. Definitely not on the train. Uh, but obviously, as time goes by and like, you see, especially the Return of the Jedi, Boba Fett, you kind of realize that maybe he is overhyped a little bit. Uh, and I think that now with the new Mandalorian episode, obviously there's a new appreciation for his story arc, especially now that you've refreshed my memory, Nani, with the depth that they achieved with Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Clone Wars does that with most characters it touches, because that show is just amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, but for me, one of the interesting things though is like I feel that there is some sort of like dissonance in the way that Boba Fett one is portrayed in the movies, now the live action show, the Clone Wars, and comic books slash books, because I think where in the Clone Wars and Mandalorian we're seeing this more redemption arc or
Mm-hmm.
a conflicted villain arc in Clone Wars, and now this honor bound uh, hero, anti-hero. We still don't
Mm-hmm.
know person in Mandalorian. I feel that his characterization maybe in books and comic books, and granted, I haven't read
Yeah.
most of them, so fanboys, I'm sorry. Uh, but it feels like through those that media, they make him more of an epic villain, like the badass, bounty
Mm-hmm.
hunter. And it feels, at least to me, like there's like a one-dimensional way of like reading Boba Fett
Mm-hmm.
as a character, which is kind of why I never got on board with that. Like characters that don't have any uh, depth and are just badass because they
Or
look
like
badass,
internal
and that's it.
conflict or
Yeah,
something. Yeah, that
like
can be
don't
relatable. Yeah.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
don't do it for me as much.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because also in the canon comics that are going around now on Marvel, uh, again, I haven't read them, but what I've seen online in terms of the reception and what's happening with
Mm-hmm.
those comics, it's a lot of mixed reception because there's been a lot of portrayal of violence against women has been pretty egregious, apparently, uh, and the characterization again that Boba has in those comic books is pretty, pretty straightforward as like a villain
Mm-hmm.
antagonist. Uh,
Okay.
so I definitely appreciate what the last episode of Mandalorian did.
Yeah.
So again, I am still more of a fan of Mando and Din Djarin and Cobb Vanth
Mm-hmm.
than I am Boba, but I do appreciate now that the Bobaception, as we were talking at the beginning of
The
the
Boba
episode,
Assumption.
there has been a layer
Yeah.
added to
Well,
make
tell
the
us, Mo, what did it add? Like, what happened now in the last episode that Boba is an onion?
I, I,
he's
I
a
think
beautiful onion,
well,
a fried onion that blossoms.
blossoms. What it adds and what sort of like it's boiling in my back head cannon. But
Yeah.
let's hold that for predictions later on.
Okay.
Uh, you see all of a sudden an aged. We've seen a young Boba. We've seen a prime Boba,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're seeing the equivalent of what will be a master who hopefully it will be the either that mentor that could be for Din, or it could be that whole story of redemption, the one we've actually as fans have been craving. Like it could be what Kylo could have been in a way.
Okay.
uh, that's the optimistic side of it.
Mm-hmm.
But on what we got, we all of a sudden have still a apparently someone that's a badass that's been trained
Mm-hmm.
all of their lives as
Mhm, mhm.
just I wouldn't even say to kill. I think at that moment I would say he was just trained to be a kick ass.
Yeah.
Like
Well, he's been trained for revenge, right? He's gone to destroy Mace Windu. That has
Yeah.
been the motivation of his training, basically.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of like I know Goose, you don't like this idea, but might be it gives credence to that idea of like bringing back Mace Windu to see how Boba reacts after Boba's redemption story. And it will be a nice touchback of like a callback. You have Mace Windu, who was probably best friends with Yoda at that moment. Like,
Right? Best friends are going out to
Pals.
the arcade
pal,
together,
I totally see them just palling out, like
having coffee.
have
Space
I
coffee,
kind
sorry.
of space coffee or tea, space tea.
Space tea. Yeah.
Um, so even though far-fetched, I think it will be really interesting, uh, and
So
it
if
will keep
framed correctly, you wouldn't be against them bringing
No.
Mace
If from
Windu vibe.
well,
Mhm.
well, again, Lucasfilm, check it out. This is my
Eh,
headcanon.
Okay.
Uh, if you heard it here first, so
exclusive.
exclusive. Grogu is gonna get saved by Mace Windu. Mace Windu was the one that heard the call. That means that for season 3, it will be Grogu training as a Jedi, so that Grogu can see. Grogu already saw what's life within. Now it's gonna see what's life as a Jedi
With
to
Mace.
then, with Mace Windu, to then make the decision: do I want to be a Jedi or be within? Which will give a good arc of separation. I think we can benefit from that. We will see different angles and look into the Force, and then Din can have uh, its own their own journey
Mhm.
with Boba as that character that went through redemption
Mhm.
and now can show another way. So eventually, at the end of the day, Mando will not only have Mando's way will not only be either Bo-Katan's or the Armorer or Boba's. It's gonna be a combination of those three,
Hmm.
And what works for
and what works for
yeah.
Din
Mhm.
and eventually Mando.
Mhm.
I mean, Grogu. My bad.
Grogu, yeah. And then
Yes.
somewhere when they meet, if we're following this timeline, when they meet, you get that Mace Windu and Boba reunited.
Yes.
And
Reunited.
yeah. And then what
And
do I do? Do I try to murder him? Do I accept that I have already gotten over this and have grown beyond?
or
Yeah.
and it will be a really interesting. I think in a day and age, Bo was a child of trauma. That's
Yeah.
PTSD all over the
Mm-hmm.
place. You know,
Yep.
goddamn, doesn't matter who your dad is. If it's right in front of you, you're a kid, and it gets their head sliced off.
Yep.
That's
That'll mess someone
that.
up. Yeah. And
That's
we know that there's those space psychiatrists,
yeah.
psychologists, because like
Clearly,
no one goes to get help. Ben didn't. Han Solo hasn't. Luke, no one.
no one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we're
Yeah.
talking about people that probably had access to space therapists, but didn't have.
Well,
No.
and it's
Which
not
which
like he had.
which might be a good thing. That's why we need to build the radio telescope. That galaxy far away.
they need our
Actually,
they need
they
our
need
Earth
our
They need
psychologist.
psychologists.
psychologist.
No, but it's this kid that was
Bring it
traumatized, and
back.
then he had no role models growing up. He just had other bounty hunters that were
Well, exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Bad role.
His role models were other bounty hunters that had even less of a moral code than he had as a kid. I mean,
And
mhm.
now that you say that, it will tie a little bit on how Boba reacted on the episode to the Empire. Like it wasn't like,
Yeah.
oh, the Empire's back, I'm gonna buddy up with them, because clearly he was the guy to go to for the Empire. I mean, at least for Darth Vader. His
Yeah.
reaction was clearly stern and almost
Like a negative.
uh, I loved how he said, "Oh, there's no spy stream," because
Yeah.
Mando could have confirmed it was the Empire, like an Empire ship, because Mando had seen the chip.
Mhm.
It took Boba said, "Oh, there's no spy stream," kind of
Yeah.
tying it back to, I've known what, like I've been on the underworld. I've been past
Mhm.
that. It also ties
Mhm.
back to, and then you have a more concerned Boba that then all of a sudden also is so the word is so important
Mhm.
that they're willing to sacrifice their life for somebody that they don't know,
Mhm.
but still feel the allegiance as foundlings.
Yeah.
But that based on that point though, I wonder what happened to Boba in
The Sarlacc pit in the
between
years in
whenever,
between.
because
Yeah.
maybe it was between Empire and Return of the Jedi. Who knows?
So
That
so
made
Something.
him
so
Yeah.
so
switch his
so
not
again,
switch his
okay,
allegiance, but switch his perspective
Mhm.
that then I should tantalize you with another
theory.
Mobius
Here we
idea.
go. Uh huh.
As long as it
What
doesn't involve Mace Windu.
It doesn't. It
You do not
involves.
like that, do
It,
you?
I
I,
don't.
I,
I
I'm,
don't.
I'm,
I don't
I'm,
like the
I'm,
Sebastian Stan fan cast. I don't like Mace Windu coming back. But that's separate.
no, no,
Hmm.
Let's hear
don't
it.
worry, don't worry. Mace Windu is it will be occupied with Grogu. There's that we won't see that reunion until the end of the season.
Okay.
But what we will see, and it's actually Boba is in Tatooine. Who else is in Tatooine during that time?
Cub
Oh wait,
Band.
no shit. Well, what if somehow the ghost of Obi-Wan?
I'm gonna veto this idea. This is the
No,
second time I'm using my
no,
executive veto
no.
powers.
Second
Mm-mm,
Beetle.
mm-mm.
Or
What do
it
you
could
think?
just
What do
be
you
it could
think,
just
Nani?
No. You're going too far.
Yeah,
Too far.
going too far. Okay, okay.
But I have
Take
to
it
say
back.
that there's
do the cartwheel. Just like
I would like to know. I mean, even if they don't talk about it completely, but I would like to know what happened because you don't just see it in the fact that now he's honor bound to
Mhm.
Din, like you see at the end of this episode. Like he already had his armor. The if you
Mhm.
were doing just quid pro quo, he could be like, check it, like your ship's destroyed. You can't follow me. Like,
Mhm.
good luck saving the kid. I mean, it's not only that he was honor bound in that, but you see it in when he saved Fennec.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like he saw somebody in danger. Old Boba wouldn't have cared to
Yeah.
see somebody on the ground almost dying. Like he actually took her in, saved her, and made her because he didn't force her, but she became loyal to him. A
Mhm.
woman that had never shown actual loyalty to anybody is actually loyal to him. I don't think just because he saved him. I think there's
Mhm.
something more there that he has learned that he's kind of passing to other
Mhm.
Yeah.
people. So I would like to know how he got there because
Well, yeah, and I think that's what we might get. Hopefully, because right now Din only knows, and this is kind of like segueing away from Boba, but Din only knows what a foundling is from the armorer's perspective.
right.
Mhm.
But it clearly seems that Boba is in tuned with and highly respects Django, his father,
Yeah.
Oh,
uh, and knows about Mandalorian history. So it
Hmm.
will be interesting to see a Boba retelling the story of what the foundlings initially were,
mhm.
Hmm.
because I
Ooh,
will
a
change.
flashback where Tamora Morrison is playing a de-aged Django during the Mandalorian. So, ooh, I like that.
Oh, that
I
would
like that.
just
I like that more than the rumored Boba Fett spin-off show. I don't want fucking
okay.
Boba Fett show. No, we got the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
I do like seeing flashbacks of Boba slash Django to go with what you're saying. I just blew my mind a little bit there.
Yeah. Um, and
Dark
I did like
Galaxy.
that. I mean, I know there's what was it that you called them, Goose? Gatekeepers?
Gate the gate. Yes, gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Gatekeepers.
That I was surprised that they finally confirmed that he really was a Mandalorian, a
Mhm.
foundling, and then it seems like what you were saying, Mo, that Django did raise him knowing what a foundling is and what a
Mhm.
foundling is supposed to be, and whatever the way that he was taught, he did pass it on to Boba because he actually knows more than Din ever did.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
so I did like that confirmation that he is the real Mandalorian. Um,
And and and,
apparently we
and
were supposed to know this already, but
Yeah,
to me it was a good
there's a
yeah.
contingency of fans that like to judge if you're a true Star Wars fan or not by the compendium of knowledge you might have. And apparently, after the episode aired, there are, as I mentioned, this group of fans that are upset with people, general population on Twitter and the YouTubes and YouTube personalities and whatnot that didn't have Legends knowledge of Django being originally a foundling. And to that, I say, poo poo to you, I guess. And if you feel more powerful, you feel more powerful, then good for you, bro.
Mhm.
Keep reading your legend stuff. You should actually, in a way, foment and be glad that the show brought up, a part of the lore that some people, myself included, wasn't necessarily aware of because
Yeah.
guess what? I like to consume other media too. I don't know every single piece of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
So I think it's a positive for you to like have people discover that
Yeah.
piece of it, and
Instead of hating on people for not knowing it.
yeah, it's like
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
just actually educate them. Then like, oh, this
Yeah.
is great. These are some cool stories
Yeah.
that you should
Mhm.
check out to see how it all ties and
Yeah.
boom. Because hey, guess what? You're you're not a bigger fan than me. I'm not a bigger fan than you. We're all
Yeah. We
if
just
we
know
like
Well,
Star
different
well,
Wars,
well,
things.
we
Yeah.
all like Star Wars.
well. Even by their own, if it was just even selfishly to just invite people to learn about the media, might actually get newer fans into the old media, which
Mm-hmm.
will eventually trickle
Mhm.
down to bringing more Legends stuff into the
Yeah.
canon.
Yeah.
Because clearly, I mean, I have to be honest. Apart from what I read from Wikipedia, I don't know anything about Legends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But there are some really cool stuff in there,
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
which absolutely has a plethora of creativity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But then again, who knows?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, just be positive about it instead of
Something to think
yeah,
about. Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
something simple.
it's this whole weird mentality of like just because you know this one fringe part of
Mhm.
the lore that somehow makes you superior to someone else that doesn't have that
Mhm.
knowledge is it's I don't know, it's just absurd to me, this whole gatekeeping thing. Like when your whole fandom is based on negativity and gatekeeping and hating new stuff and making sure that people feel inadequate on their fandom based on that knowledge.
Mhm.
I just feel you're doing a disservice, not just to yourself, but
Mhm.
Star Wars or whatever fandom you're doing that with and the
Mhm.
people around you. Because the whole point of fandoms is to enjoy the media that we
Yeah.
consume, to be positive and constructive with it, and to, have more people enjoy the things we love. Because if we're not enjoying it and we're not letting other people enjoy it, what the hell are we doing?
Sure.
So that's my diatribe with
Well,
The
well,
little.
well,
gatekeeping.
no, as a put it on a positive note, and for those fans that are, I love XKCD comics. They have a comic for everything out there, and they have one that it's like 1 in 10,000, and it's the story of he tries to not make fun of people that do not know things the
Okay.
person already knows, because for everybody that knows something, there's on average 1 in 10,000 people that are hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
if he makes fun of people, then they're actually training them not to tell me when they have those moments.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you miss out on the fun.
Mhm.
So it's actually, instead of like, oh, you didn't knew that, it's like, oh, you're 1 in 10,000. Come
Yeah.
on, get to know this.
Yeah.
It's counterproductive. The attitude
Yeah.
is just counterproductive. But getting back to Boba.
Getting back to
I
Boba.
I just love this new layer that they have added to the character, and it doesn't contradict what came before. It it
No,
just
not
it
at all.
makes, yeah, it kind of goes back to how he was like as a kid. Like he was trying to not be a bad guy, but then eventually probably just gave up because he was all alone, and he was like, I can bounty hunt, and then I'll separate myself from actually being a bad guy, because I never actually saw him as a bad guy. I just saw him as a guy doing a job,
Hmm. Hmm.
because you don't see him like on
Interesting.
purpose antagonizing people, you know.
I love how
Interesting point.
the phrases it still applies. Just a
Yeah.
simple person, just
Yeah.
Make
going
his
their
way
way
through the
around
galaxy.
it. Like
Yeah.
there's really there's no moral judgment.
Mm-hmm.
You're not saying, oh, I'm a good person or I'm a
Mm-hmm.
bad person. I'm just
Yeah.
a simple person. So
Yeah.
that means that maybe goose that fear of like what was uh, Boba doing in Tatooine. Maybe it's just that alone time that
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna foment an in-house hermit.
In-house hermit. Yeah.
Like sometimes we need to step back,
Mm-hmm.
just take some time.
Hmm.
To me, the image of Boba kind of invoked the new Boba invoked like a monkish.
Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
very
Yeah.
like shaved head, the whole robes, this
Mm-hmm.
whole like
Well, at this point, I don't think Temora has a choice on the hairstyles. He can rock.
I know, but he still looked badass. So
But
Yes,
but but
even with the dad.
well, you can always have a wig. You can
yeah,
always CGI
yeah,
some shit. Like,
you
CGI some
can.
hair.
It has been done.
yeah, it has been done. So
It's easier to add hair than to take it off.
Yep.
exactly.
As
So
Justice League painfully learned.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
so
Got that
so
mustache.
so like Nani says, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it actually
Mm-hmm.
benefits from the fact that
Mm-hmm.
we had this complicated backstory and
Mm-hmm.
how does that person overcome their own trauma,
Mm-hmm.
which is something we need in our society. I don't know.
Yeah. Because it seemed to
Um,
me like in the original trilogy, he had kind of like morally detached himself
Mm.
and saw it just as a job and didn't, you know, want to think about if what he was doing was right or wrong. He just became this completely detached person and
Yep.
just focused on just growing his name, becoming the fiercest bounty hunter and all these things. And then he had this near death experience, which was ridiculous in the Sarlacc pit. Like he was probably hitting himself, like, how did this even happen? And then I think he just kind of,
Yeah, I think he was thinking that. How did
yeah,
this
yeah,
happen?
like, how did this actually happen? I mean, I'm the biggest badass bounty hunter in the galaxies at this point in time when it happens. And then he
Mhm.
ends up like tumbling comically into the Sarlacc pit. And I think he had to, aside from, you know, I think there was some outside influence too, but I think he actually just reevaluated himself and had to think about like, what have I been doing this whole time?
Yeah.
And there was probably a eureka moment somewhere along the lines, and now we get this version of Boba that has
which
like,
which is
Mhm.
originally why I thought this was gonna go differently, because I thought it was gonna go more along the lines you're talking about, Nani, and
Mhm.
that he would not actually seek out the armor for himself, because I thought that he had, based on your uh,
Mhm.
stream of thought that you were going through, I had that same thing, but it culminated in him not wanting the armor because he had transcended it, and
Yeah,
that's why he never went to get it from Cop Van.
yeah,
So he would somehow, when he ran into Mando, he would, which I don't know how he would have ran into him in this head canon that I'm
Mhm.
making up in my mind, even though it's not real anymore. But he would, in a way, have convinced uh, Din to return the armor to Cobb, because
Mhm.
he realized that in Cobb's hands is a better place, as he's doing it to protect his
yeah,
people, and Boba just doesn't need it because he's in a different, higher
yeah.
plane of understanding.
Which might still happen eventually, but I think
Because I
now
think
he,
he's gonna die.
well, I mean, as the mentor has
yeah,
to.
The mentor
Mhm.
has to die. Yes. If you want to
Mhm.
know more about that, listen to our Mando Monday episode.
We go deeper into all
We go
those
deeper
things and our
into that.
speculations for his relationship with Din. So
Yes.
Boba has now become to me originally one of the one dimensional characters that I didn't understand why people loved so much. I did always like him, thought he was cool, but I never understood why they liked him so much because I thought he was just so one dimensional. And now with everything being tied together, there's so many dimensions to this character and there's so much more to explore. And I think it was just, it's beautifully done.
Yep.
Uh, and
Do we
just,
feel?
And
Do we feel though? Before going into that,
mhm,
and I know this is more Mandalorian
mhm,
conversation, more so than Boba, but I'm curious what you.
well, now they're one and the same. It's
yeah,
the
Oh, and
title. The
that's
title is called The Mandalorian. It's not
I,
called
I
like
and
they're
mhm,
all Mandalorian.
that's
mhm,
what my question goes to, because season one, Din Djarin is clearly the main character. This is his story,
mhm,
but it feels in a way like that has been shipped away in this season, both with Bo Katan's introduction and Ahsoka, and now even Boba, since now we know Boba will be,
mhm.
at least for this leg of the journey, be joining Mando. Do we feel that Boba's appearance has, in a way, overshadowed Mando's journey?
I would say
I don't
no.
think so. Mhm. You go first, Mo.
Uh, I would say no, and in the sense that we will just, it'll still be an accessory. Like, still, again, going back to what we talked, like Boba will still be a plot accessory to Mando's journey,
Mhm,
just as at some point there was a plot accessories for Luke's journey.
mhm.
Hmm.
So, and it circles back. It will be a beautiful way to, it's Boba has always been a side character. They've never been. I kind of like when side characters have their own little backstories on arcs, and
Mm-hmm.
but you don't need them to overtake it. But it goes in line to having, and there's just me going off like think maybe even like Lucasfilm conspiracy theories, but clearly cinema is not coming back anytime soon. And by the
Mm-hmm.
time it comes back, people are will be more accustomed to on-demand media. I mean, it's economy, so they're
Yep.
probably thinking, wait, how can we change what we had planned as movies to just make a series,
Mm.
and to have a series where you have a mentor and disciple relationship,
Mm-hmm.
which goes in line also with Star Wars. We've
Mm.
seen there's always a mentor disciple relationship, but can we see it from the Mandalorian perspective? This is
Mm.
what the show is about.
Mm-hmm.
How do you identify what is the Mandalorian way? What will
Mm-hmm.
eventually become what it was? So, in a way, Boba is what it was,
Mm.
how it transcends. Then is a byproduct of what it happened,
Mhm.
and then what what will be that relationship. So I don't know. I think it's if it's thought out that way,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm down for it, and I'm excited.
Okay. I don't know. I just
Awkward silence.
no. It's just that I was just
Just
thinking for a
thinking.
minute there
Yeah.
because I do see that as something that is happening for sure. Because but I see it more as a global thing, as we've discussed before, with all the Mandalorians that Din has interacted with on this show, and I include Cobb Vanth, even though he's not Mandalorian, but he wore the armor.
Mm-hmm.
But so that in a way informs Din's relationship to his creed. So I don't see it necessarily tied one to one to Boba, because I think Boba is just one of the cogs that will
Yeah,
help Din's realization that he
Mm-hmm.
can take off his helmet, and I don't mean that literally. I mean that
Yeah.
figuratively. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
to find his role within what Mandalorian culture is.
Find his
Yeah.
own way.
Find his
and
own way.
and and,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
and not Nani, I don't know if you had something to say, but
Mm-mm.
something.
Mm.
So as a segue to what Goose you were saying, Star Wars has always been at some point it establishes like the mythology that the culture needs in a way, or reflects what is happening. And what better way than to show we've already seen that Mandalorians are completely diverse
Mm-hmm.
individuals, which
Mhm.
kind of reflects our reality. We have the Mandalorians that there's an infighting, there's as
Mm.
also, so we can see actually a reflection. So to me, the sequel trilogy isn't the mythos. They just
Mm.
wanted to get that out of the way.
Mm.
The Mandalorian will be that new mythos if it's played correctly. Which
Mm-hmm.
so now, as because now that I see how this episode played out, the fact that Mandalorian this season, we haven't seen any real growth for Din,
Mm.
is because precisely because of that, because they're actually expanding and to this, they're actually getting down into the nitty gritty of making this a reality of the next
Mm.
mythology for a new day and age.
Yeah. So you think that they're more laying down the groundwork here to make
Yeah.
this more long lasting and make the mythos make sense more by tying it together to what has come before more strongly, and have the character develop within this world that we already know.
Yes, combined with how can we make more money, because we're gonna
Of
plug
course,
in
because obviously,
our
and it's
next
all about the
shows.
more
Yes,
It's all
merch
about the
and how.
Benjamins. Yep.
Yes, of
it's
course.
all about the bennies.
No, but I do understand that, because I mean, season 3 is already confirmed, and if you make your world larger, you have more storylines that Mando could go into. Like if you limit yourself too much from the beginning, then it starts being derivative later on. So maybe now is a good time to start fanning off a little bit. I would not be against that. I want to see how the season ends before we get there. But going back to what you were asking, Goose, about Boba Fett possibly overshadowing uh, Din, I don't think that's what they're doing. Honestly, I there's this beautiful now hero's journey to Boba Fett that has happened. Like, abandoned child,
Mhm.
uh, filled with revenge. So you see all these stages of grief that
Mhm.
Boba Fett has gone through. So he becomes this very complete character, and I don't know if they're just gonna have Boba Fett, along for the ride until the child is saved, or if they're gonna keep him around longer. But I think the way that he was framed, I mean, even in the episode, as cool as Boba was, Mando really was the star of that episode. Not like in the previous one where the star of the episode was Ahsoka. In this episode,
Yep.
Mando really was the star of this episode. And as much as Boba Fett had to add, it was still Mando's story again in this episode. And I think if they keep doing it that way and frame his relationship with Boba Fett as this mentor relationship and a necessary step in his hero's journey and a necessary
Mhm.
step to him finding his own way through his own experiences and what he knows from Django and everything else and he knows about the Mandalorian Civil War from Django apparently
Mhm.
because he talked
Yep.
about it. So he would be a good tool to get history from. I thought they were going to use Bo-Katan for that, but I think Boba Fett would be more effective, and
Yeah.
and maybe Bo-Katan would give her story too, and then he can get all the different perspectives. And but I think as a mentor for him, Boba Fett will be very good for that.
uh, to build off on that, do you think they're going to do the build up to the traditional Star Wars thing, where it's like build a family around a character? You know, you had Luke, whose family was obviously
Mm-hmm.
Han and Leia. We have
Mm-hmm.
the Clone Wars, where it was like Anakin, Luke, Obi Wan, Ahsoka
Mm-hmm.
family. Then Rebels, Kanan, Ezra, Hera, Seb, and Sabine and Chopper, even though I don't like Chopper. So will we do something like that for I say
Like Boba,
something like that
Din.
exactly where
Yeah.
like Mando starts out as the lone wolf, then he gets a kid, and then
Yeah.
like there's a surrogate family that's built then around him, and it might be just to throw names that have been showing. I don't think Bo-Katan is, but
No.
Boba, Fennec, maybe Cara Dune, if they don't kill her off, we'll see. Grief Karga, and they
Mm-hmm.
become like a family
Grogu.
in the
Yeah.
Razor Crest, no, in
Mhm.
Razor Crest 2 or something.
Or whatever happens.
Uh,
I would not be opposed to it. I mean, I love this whole surrogate families, found families theme that has been going on with Star Wars throughout the ages, and to have Mando have his own surrogate family and not this, cult, the way, the armor. I'm just doing it because this is how I was raised. Like him actually choosing his family
Mhm.
and his companions and everything, even if they're not always together. Like maybe they could go on different adventures and
Mhm.
everything. But I would actually really enjoy kind of seeing this surrogate family thing happening. So that's me.
Because I think that would also be a good way to also start bringing in new character of the week
Mm-hmm.
type dynamics where it doesn't boil down to the same script that we've seen in season 2, where it's just like Mando and one new person,
Mm-hmm.
Mando and one new person, Mando and one new person. Now it can just be like this whole family interaction between
Mm-hmm.
Mando and his crew mates, family mates, whatever, and then like the adventure of the week type thing
Yeah.
that would make it a little more less predictable in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that it's not always the quid pro quid. Oh my
Quid
god!
pro quid
Thank you.
pro quo that was
There we
happening
go.
in this
Oh my
season.
god!
Yes.
Got tongue twisted there.
Yeah. And
Perhaps I'm not saying
yeah.
that's what will happen, but I
I know,
think
and
that
it
could
would
be an
it would be
interesting
really
twist.
cool to see like the dynamics of these characters because most of them so far, not only Mando, all of them have been lone wolves most
Mhm.
of their lives. So to see
Yep.
them like having to interact with each other and trying to be like unselfish in that relationship,
Yeah,
I think would be really,
and
I
and,
don't know,
and, and
very
and also
interesting and yeah.
and also just spices up the
yes.
show, right? Because you
Oh,
don't
absolutely.
have this whole same structure that these
Yeah.
two seasons have. It's like, oh, the individual
Mm-hmm.
episodes with the individual characters,
Mm-hmm.
and then the team up at the end. And
Yeah.
here you just start with the team up, so to speak, of like the main
Yeah.
crew. Then
Mm-hmm.
they're going on their adventures, and they can split up or get
Yeah.
together and like have more different dynamics.
Yeah. And
In
you
my
can
opinion.
already see that Boba Fett has basically Fennec is like part of his family now. So you already have like two people that are starting to combine, and then adding Mando as like a third person into it and seeing how it starts. And then as you start slowly adding more people to it, how those relationships evolve.
Mm.
Well,
would
you already
be
have a family of 4.
Yep.
Grogu.
Yep. And then, Cod Vanth at some point with Mando,
And
that
Uh, the chipping it's begun. But,
he has to come back.
isn't it what Star Wars has always been the story, the found family that getting together. So I think it will be a beautiful way for Star Wars to and the Mandalorian to evolve. Now, I was just like thinking, like, oh, I can imagine obviously they had to destroy the Razor Crest because the Razor Crest was just Mando's car. It was kind of like that bachelor that has this cool car going around, but it's only like for 2 persons. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have a family, so I have to
get
get
a
something
minivan.
bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what if the minivan, and this could tie things together, is the Millennium Falcon? Where is it?
I had a similar. Wait,
Ooh.
did we discuss this in the last episode, or was I only
No.
talking about it with the?
No, we
But
didn't.
I had this
No,
idea.
we have not talked about this.
I had this idea that almost literally the same idea as yours, Mo. But instead of being the Millennium Falcon, it would be the Outrider from Shadows of the Empire. So it's like basically a clone of the Millennium Falcon, and we know that ship is canon because it was in the special edition of A New Hope. It was in Rebels. It's like, hey, it's Millennium Falcon is too recognizable. Lucasfilm is probably not going to bring back Dash Rendar and the Outrider. So the next best thing, you have a surrogate Dash Rendar and Din Djarin, not without his helmet, and the Outrider as your Millennium Falcon. And that way you tie like Shadows of the Empire, Legends, continuity, and like do the Millennium Falcon thing without the Millennium
yes.
Falcon.
Yeah, that exactly. Like both make sense. Or like the Millennium Falcon kind of like will eventually it will make sense how at the end it ends up being a trash
Mm-hmm.
In Jakku,
in Jakku.
after all these
And then
adventures that they have.
well, it will make sense because we're seeing already the New Republic and the beginnings of the First Order. So what if we get a glimpse of Jakku at some point
Who knows?
with the Millennium Falcon, with the whole family? That's
Yeah. This new family.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I got Lucasfilm, take notes.
They're listening.
But of course, and
This is
and
fact.
unfortunately, we will never get recognized.
No, they can't do it because they can't show favoritism because then all the other podcasts they can't do it.
Oh God. Anyway, I kind of wanted to go back a little bit to I don't remember it was Mo or Goose who brought it up. Back to the last episode, Boba's like reaction to seeing the Empire coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really cool how it was framed because the ships that originally come down are First Order ships, and you can tell that they're keeping this continuity because Boba doesn't think Empire until he actually leaves and sees Moff Gideon's ship. Like he doesn't immediately think Empire when he just sees the ships or the stormtroopers.
Well, I think maybe it's a matter of scale. He thought it was just like he saw
like some random
stormtrooper troops, so he's like, oh, maybe these are just like, holdouts. But then he saw like the big cruiser. So he's like, oh shit, this isn't just some couple stragglers. This is a big deal.
This
Empire.
is like Empire, yeah.
Well, it's interesting because actually, how Boba and Fennec framed that Grogu just had like a bounty. So in a way, they probably knew about Grogu if they're still keeping with like bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Like,
it seemed like he actually is still in the bounty hunter network.
Yeah, in the know.
Probably has a lifetime subscription at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Even more than Din apparently. Din at this point doesn't know what's happening.
No, he's younger. He's just got his entry level.
Yeah.
This guy has the clean slate of an armor versus the rugged, tiered, put together with scraps of. I love the whole suit on the
Yeah.
episode for Boba. How
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and Nani, you said that like you have the kneecap with like the
Yeah.
shooting,
Mm-hmm.
and Matt like Boba's armor is like super custom made. It's like
Mhm.
it just fits for him, and you know
Mm-hmm.
that's why I know how to use this. Like even if I fail, I still aim correctly.
Win. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
still
but
when
And on that
even when I
note,
fail, I win.
oh yeah. And on that note, I think what your guys' answers is going to be, but I have to ask it. Did you think the armor looked better the way Jango Fett had it decorated, or the way that Boba had it?
Boba Fett. I always thought that it looked weird
yeah
on Django.
Right?
Like Boba. I don't know why, even though like I've done like I've obviously I have a lot of time on my hands, but I've done side by side comparisons of like the
Mm-hmm.
Django armor and the Boba armor, and like
Mm-hmm.
technically they're almost exactly identical, but like there's just
It is the
something
same
that
armor.
there's
It's like
yeah,
the
it's
coloring
missing
in it, and
it's missing some pieces, but overall it's the same.
yeah.
Like I can't put my finger on it, but like it's just feels off
well
on Django to me.
you're comparing a stock model versus the
Mhm.
customized
True,
evolved like
true.
version of like the arm. So although it was interesting that when I saw a picture of Django's armor, it
Mhm.
reminded me of Din's armor
Mhm.
because it only I think it only has very minimal
Yeah, it has like
Yeah,
some
blue, I think,
like
and then the
some
rest is
blue
just
and the rest
silver.
is just
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
like
And
the
then obviously the
Beskar.
recognizable
yep,
antenna
Boop.
yep.
on the helmet. Yeah. But I remember
Which
the first time
ooh,
that you saw it in Attack of the Clones, and I thought it's very recognizable. That has to be Boba's armor, but it was jarring, the coloring on it, and that it's not as weathered, I think. And
Yeah, I think that.
obviously, yeah, obviously then you remember what it looks like in the original trilogy, and now how they did the armor again in the Mandalorian. It
Mm,
just looks perfect, because it's just like, that armor has
exquisite.
seen some shit. So there's
literally.
yeah,
It
yeah,
probably, yeah,
yeah.
probably came out the other side of the Sarlacc. Yeah. Or according to your theory, Mo, out of the Sarlacc and then out of the Krayt Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Didn't you say the Krayt Dragon ate the Sarlacc?
I thought that was
Yeah,
you,
no, no, no,
Goose.
no.
No, that was Mo.
That's what.
Yeah, but then you kind of changed the story, and I
Yeah,
kind
I
of like
think Mo did the
the
whole. He had to get rid of the armor to
yeah
leave the Sarlacc pit. Like,
get rid of the armor. No, no, that
yeah.
was Goose. That was Goose.
Oh, okay. We're switching theories here
We're
then.
switching. Yes.
We just talk too
this
much. We just talk too much, in general.
That's what
That's what happened.
people are here for, hopefully.
But anyway, Boba's a badass.
No,
Finally.
I will finally jump the bandwagon.
Yep.
Boba.
Hmm. And now you can see him. Not
Yes.
only was he added all these like depth to the character, but considering that the last time we had saw him like chronologically was him falling into the Sarlacc pit, this time was his fighting was just
Vicious.
so good. I mean, everything. And as soon as he put the armor on, it was like his instincts got heightened. And you can
Mhm.
see him just, barely not even looking, like hearing a sound and like shooting. And there was just something amazing about how the character grew and what he symbolizes now, I think, for,
Mhm.
you know, everybody that wasn't a huge Boba Fett fan. And I hope for the people that already were a huge one, I hope that they see this as a great addition instead of kind of taking as a negative,
Yeah.
because he is such a complete character now and an interesting one.
So some people, to your point about the
Yep.
previous fans, some people are seeing this whole episode. They're saying that it looks like it was a fan film, and that they actually destroyed Boba Fett's character
Nope.
because like they made him too. But I'm like, oh my god, it's like there's.
No.
It's like, are you people never going to be satisfied with anything? It's like they
Nope.
finally put Boba Fett on screen for more than 2 minutes doing something actually productive.
Having more than
You,
4
and you
lines.
and you just don't accept it. So it's like
Yep.
nothing will make you just change fandoms. Just go away.
Maybe they actually should have gone into Star Trek. Maybe they accidentally
Yeah.
gone to Star Wars and it was not their thing. And, just
It-
because sunken cost fallacy. It's like I already
I'm
read
already
everything.
invested, so I
I'm
might as
already
well just
invested,
say,
so I might as well just keep at it.
yeah.
But I but that's the beauty, like new stories change our minds. Like it
Mm-hmm.
changed Nani's mind as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
or it seems. Like,
Yes, it did. It definitely changed my mind about. I joined the bandwagon too now.
okay.
I mean, I still think Cad Bane is the best bounty hunter, but I am a big fan of
That's
Boba Fett too
beyond
now.
question.
So,
Beyond reproach.
Yeah.
so
I think
do you?
that's a good
Well,
point. And then we
oh,
start wrapping up. I think.
Yeah, I
yes,
think it's a good
I
time.
was gonna ask,
Coda.
do do any of you have like, I guess like any fan or hopeful of how Boba will get treated in the future, or how would you like that to be?
Well, I think we can assume that he will be around at least for the next episode.
Yeah.
Well, for the end of the season, I think.
Or for the end of the season. I do like this treatment of him as like this mentor character now. So I would like to see that more developed.
Yeah.
I mean, if they kill him, I'm gonna cry like a lot. Like I know it, but I think it would add a lot to
That's right.
his character too. Like this is like the end of his journey, and then he actually ends, either protecting Grogu or protecting Mando or something like that. Just something selfless would just bring his entire character arc to just this beautiful conclusion.
Yes.
That. So I think Goose is agreeing with me.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
What she
Yep.
said.
What she said. So that's why
all of it.
all of that. That's exactly
it.
what I think. Yeah.
So if they do some treatment like that, I would be really excited, and I think it would elevate this character now in my mind to like legendary proportions if they really treat him this way. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I don't think I have anything more to add to that, just because I feel that they've done more enough to the character at this point that I feel everything else that could be done to him would be either redundant or just bordering on like just going into a fan service territory of just like, okay, well, you guys like Boba, so let's just keep doing the same Boba Fett thing all over again. So I feel that story, and it's not to say that I feel like all the characters have to, bite the bullet heroically at some point. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think for his character, that arc just makes sense both for who he is, who he has been, and what he can be for Din Djarin. So that's the only thing to add to what was already very brilliantly said by Nani.
Yes, absolutely.
I have some words too.
Yes. All three of us have
Of
words.
course. Nani, you have amazing and beautiful words.
I'm kidding. Okay. So what did you think, Mo? What you asked the question, so.
Well, I guess my headcanon is already like set on this idea, especially adding the fact that it was a very jarring distinction of Grogu was at peace, so it almost seems that it could be that yin yang of like the evolution of Din using violence for the greater good, and then Grogu using the Force without a lightsaber, because clearly that's what Moff Gideon already hinted. You're too young to wield this. But Mace Windu will train Grogu to be away for 30 minutes and beat the shit out of Moff Gideon and whoever comes around.
I guess we'll see. And we'll have a discussion. If he shows up, this is going to turn, I think, into a...
If he shows up, I'll just shut up and accept it and...
and deal with it.
And be okay with it.
What's canon is canon, and we have to deal.
Yep. And you heard it here first, so
and you heard
subscribe.
Trial of the Force exclusive.
Try it of the Force exclusive. Forget this isn't where it's at.
So comment as well. Don't forget to look into the whole Arecibo radio telescope petition. Please. So and even if you don't sign it, just look, learn about it. It's something
or
really interesting and share it.
There might be a Boba maybe inspired shirt
on our TeePublic. Yeah, if you want to look for merch.
Nope.
Not yet. No.
Not yet.
But
there's other ones. There's other great ones.
Keep a lookout.
Keep a lookout. But if you don't want to wait, there's some other really cool ones you can
Yes.
start, getting. By the way, to that
So
one guy, that
Oh,
bought the John Williams T-shirt. I don't know who you are. Thank you.
or girl or
Or
whoever
yeah,
person.
or whoever, yeah.
Okay, whoever. Yes. Thank you
person,
for that. Person.
Yeah.
person who bought it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes.
So on that note, I think we can agree that we are now 3 Boba Fett fans.
Bigger fan. I'm not on the bus, but
Yeah.
I
But
appreciate
bigger
it.
fans.
I-
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. We appreciate the fine aging of Boba.
I don't hate anymore. I appreciate.
I appreciate. Okay. So on that note, I think we should be signing off.
Good night.
May the force be
May
with
the
you.
Force. Yes.